Alan said that I will continue, and indeed you can hear that Sally doesn't stay on any vita, any curriculum vita. She doesn't stay on any page. I've been fortunate through a couple decades to have had a lot of experiences with Sally at academic conferences. Sally now says that she changed this recovering activist. She doesn't want to push people, to try to persuade people, that she wants collective discussions, and she wants changes, but to have them happen collectively. So she says that she's not about persuasion, but she comes with some energies that mean her ideas always come with some extra incentives. First of all, we have to acknowledge that smile. Yeah, there's the cliche, but it's true that I don't know anyone else who comes into a room and truly changes the light in the room. We wouldn't have fog in Oregon if Sally was But I want to talk just about three of her academic contributions, three of the many academic contributions. The first, she's constantly exploring the importance of language and communication habits and strategies. She's always playing with words, meanings, possibilities. And she's always daring. You heard the discussion of the titles and the kinds of articles she was writing. In a 1974 book on gay liberation in the church that she co-authored, co-edited, Sally has a chapter titled The Miracle of Lesbianism. And this was before she came up for tenure, She's doing this before she came up for tenure. During that time, she was also then trying to work to change some of these sexist language that was used so prevalently in our field of communication. And so we had these discussions about the so-called generic man and he and chairman. Then Sally became a chair and had a special interest in that. And I remember once arriving at a National Women's Studies Association meeting, and I got into the large registration hall, and away across the hall I saw Sally. And Sally raised her voice, maybe she didn't raise her voice, it's Sally, Sally, just when Sally's around. So Sally said, "Cheris, I'm the country's first chair dyke." So she's suggesting a lot of radical changes now on how we can change communication behavior, and she's breaking with 2,000 years or more of rhetorical theory to talk about persuasion as a form of violence. That sounds too simplistic. It's very nuanced. If you read her new novels, the Kanshu and the Mexter. There's a lot of discussion about that and a lot of playing on the contradictions, the difficulties, and so on with those ideas that she has, a challenge in that usual model of dominance and competition to something that she calls a womanization of the discipline, which is a move toward listening and receiving a collective rather than a competitive mode. So that's the first thing I would just mention. The second, her alternative ways of presenting her alternative ideas. Sally flies. Throughout her creative academic career, she's used fantastic fiction to explore a lot of her ideas about the survival of our planet and about communication, about violence, and a lot of them involve women's ability to fly, to move. Wanderground was a very important novel that Ellen mentioned. All of us who were feminists or exploring these ideas in the 1970s knew about Wanderground. She's always been interested in women's flying abilities, and she's actually been seen to make some flying leaps herself. In fact, a friend of mine, Sonia Foss, reports that Sally has been the only guest speaker they've had in their department who actually took a flying leap across the room as part of her presentation. But she chooses her leaps carefully. She also talks about how, although she grew up in the church, Methodist and Lutheran, she said she was never able to make that leap to give herself entirely over to the Christian faith. She and Carla, over here in the corner, the filmmaker here, have shared many discussions about religion and spirituality, not always in good harmony, perhaps. They have a lot of discussions, but often in thankfulness for changes of past decades. Carla says, I'm a Lutheran lesbian. She says, that combination may initially sound as strange as pedophile priest. Carla says that when she was younger, these descriptors, Lutheran, lesbian, seemed two cliffs flanking a vast chasm. Lutheran, lesbian, she said she thought of it, maybe it was an early onset bipolar disorder. But she said that time has allowed her to understand them as merely adjacent lobes within a much larger experience. So for decades, Sally and Carla have been on the wing in their thinking, and neither one of them have any problems with the concept of change. Change is good, particularly if it comes about through nonviolent means. And so she's been talking about less pushing through persuasion and more flying around together, and her books illustrate all that. And there's Linda's going to talk about what we have up on the screen. You can take a look at all her articles and her books. 3, I think the best part about Sally's academic and other work is that she's always rethinking even her most fundamental positions and challenging herself. A lot of self-reflection, a lot of self-criticism. These are constant strands of Sally's work, even as she moves through transforming changes. She requires of herself that she think even about the unthinkable. An example. A class at Ohio State asked her to make a video. She couldn't come to their communication class to make a video about some of her ideas. And in that video, Sally says that she has a nightmare on occasion and wakes up in a cold sweat as she contemplates 2 questions. The first, what if I'm really not a lesbian? And second, what if the fundamental Christians are right and I'm damned? So she's always been for rethinking ideas, and now she's doing this really new concept of how change can come about and how it can come about nonviolently. And she is talking about how peace is not the opposite of war. For her, the opposite of war is diversity, infinite diversity. So the people that she would have once, in her more activist days, had called her enemy or crazy or whatever, these are the people that she is very much interested in these days and interested in talking with, discussing things. She's concerned about all the things that make all of us different. She talks about the many gender identities, the continuum that we know exists of race, of gender, of ideas. And so she says, and I'll finish with her words, look at this diversity, these continuums in the world. We are each and every one of us queer. Isn't it wonderful?